Hey guys, it's Neil. I'm back for part 3 of our extended Duna mission. We are launching currently a refueler to go out to Duna and refuel our spacecraft so our Kerbonauts can go home. And while doing so, I've decided I've attached a small lander that can fit one Kerbal, although currently it has nobody in it, to the top of our refueler, which we will dock with our spacecraft over there. And it will allow us to do an Ike mission in addition to Duna. So if we're already all the way out there, we might as well land on Duna's moon of Ike. So that's what we're going to do. I've set this up. We should be lined up fairly properly for a Duna encounter as far as the planetary alignments here. And we are going to do an interesting mission profile this time. Rather than launching into orbit and setting up a maneuver to fly out to Duna, instead we are going to do directly launch to Duna, hopefully, if everything works out as planned, which means we are going to launch as usual, which we are doing now, and we are just going to keep firing our engines until we get out to a Duna encounter, or at least a Duna close approach, without ever launching ourselves into Kerbal orbit. So here we go. We're doing a fairly steep gravity turn because we have plenty of thrust and we're going to keep burning. So we have no risk of falling back into the atmosphere. This, by the way, is why we have launched at night. By launching at night, we make sure that we go outwards in the solar system from this launch. So, which is of course what we want to do. We want to go out towards Duna. So let's just take a quick look at the map. See, yep, our APO is up above the atmosphere, which is good. Shortly, we're going to go ahead and deploy our solar panels. This is key, because there is no one on board, so we need to keep our batteries charged, or else the probe body that is powering the spacecraft will die. It will run out of power, and we will just have a spacecraft that is dead in space. And I do that all the time, forget to deploy solar panels. So I sincerely hope that I'm not going to make that stupid mistake today. And here we go. From this point on, we're pointed at the horizon, and we're just going to keep burning towards the horizon until we get our escape. We're already in space, so we might as well deploy the panels here. And we're actually, on this stage, getting out fairly close to the velocity that we will need to get our escape trajectory. So there we go. Cut the engines. We're going to set Duna as our target. Now we're just going to finish up everything with this nuclear engine, which really only needs to burn a little bit at this point because we are almost all the way out towards Duna, which is very good. So hopefully, based on our alignment, we're going to get either an encounter or a fairly close approach that we can work with. Right here, directly from launch, as you saw, we didn't bother going to orbit or anything. So this was a very, let's see, and is it getting bigger or smaller, the close approach? It's getting smaller, so let's keep going. Now it's getting bigger. So, okay, that's fine. We can deal with that when we get out into a solar orbit. It's very close, as you can see. So, if we, for example, add here a maneuver, some sort of a course correction, And we can even fix our inclination a little bit. That was too much. Just push ourselves around here. And we're getting really close, you can see, 400,000 meters. And there we go. We're going to get one in any second. There we go. So that's a bigger, a larger burn than I would like it to have been. But we have plenty of fuel here, and we have the very, very efficient nuclear engines. So we're going to go ahead and perform this maneuver, which we will arrive at in about 40 seconds. It's really 40 days, of course, but at this speed of time warp, it'll take about 40 seconds to get there. And the burn will take about 8 minutes. So we will perform that in time warp, obviously. And while we're having time to kill, I'll tell you guys a little bit more about Mars, as I've done throughout some of these other missions. Mars is a very interesting planet. So they think, it is believed that at one time Mars looked very much like Earth, with with flowing oceans and all kinds of these things that had a thick atmosphere. Of course, today this is not the case. And one of the big mysteries in science is what happened to Mars's atmosphere. The main thought that most people have today is that Mars's atmosphere disappeared because Mars was not massive enough to maintain its atmosphere. So today it's about 1% of Earth's atmosphere, maybe even less, but it does have a trace atmosphere that's mostly carbon dioxide. Nonetheless, there are many tantalizing hints that there may exist even today life on Mars, despite the harsh conditions. It's very cold out there, although it does rise above freezing during Mars's summer. Nonetheless, there is evidence, and it was just recently published again, that there may actually be seasonally flowing water on Mars's surface today. We know almost for certain there was in the ancient past. There are evidence of river bends and all sorts of features that are caused by water. But satellite imagery of Mars seems to indicate there may be still flowing water on Mars, and one of the theories as to why that would be happening is that some of the chemicals on Mars may act as an antifreeze and stop the water from freezing in the conditions where normally it would freeze. Additional interesting finds that have been on Mars. There has been evidence, but it is unconfirmed, and we're not really sure how accurate it is, but there are signs of methane on Mars. And on Earth, like 90% of the methane on Earth is produced as waste from living organisms. That is really huge because the other methane is produced by volcanoes and things like that. And while Mars has volcanoes, none of them are active. There's no evidence of active geological activity today on the surface of that planet, which means that the most likely source of any methane we find may be bacteria that are producing it. And if there are bacteria on Mars, the next interesting question is, how closely related is it to us as far as its DNA? Because if the bacteria on Mars is very similar to us, it would indicate that we're cousins, and that through space, some sort of microbes were transferred either between Earth to Mars or from Mars to Earth, which then became evolved separately on both planets. If it's very different, that would seem to indicate to us that there may have been a second genesis, so to speak, that life evolved independently on Earth and on Mars. Both of these ideas and both of these possibilities have some very, very, very intriguing implications. If there was a second genesis on Earth and Mars, two neighboring planets of the same star, that would seem to indicate that life is very, very, very common throughout the universe, because we are only one star with 8 planets, and if we found life had independently developed on 2 separate planets, that would mean of the billions and billions of planets that are throughout the universe, to give a scale here, there are somewhere between 100 and 400 billion stars in our universe, and there are between in our galaxy, excuse me, and there are somewhere between 100 billion and 400 billion galaxies in the observable universe. So, and we believe that many, if not most, of those stars have planets in orbit around them. This is the case, and there were 2 geneses, I'm not really sure how you say genesis in plural, but if it occurred, life occurred twice in our solar system, that would seem to indicate that it's very likely to have occurred also around other stars on other planets, and that would really be the most important scientific discovery possibly that has ever been made. And as I'm speaking here, I'm just perfecting our encounter with Duna here, trying to get our close approach closer. Look at that, we got night encounter, but we don't really want that. There we go. So I think we need to burn north some to try to get this inclination issue fixed. We should still have plenty of fuel by the time we get there in order to refuel our other spacecraft. Anyway, back to the original point. What we discover on Mars with the current rovers and possibly any future manned missions will be really, could possibly be, change the entire way we view the universe. And it's very, very exciting. We're living in a very, very exciting time. And I plan on seeing a manned landing on Mars in my lifetime. I'm 27, so if we do not land on Mars in my lifetime, that really would be just a tragedy of epic proportions. See, are we going the right way? Yes, we are. So we need to point ourselves 270, bring our orbit down a bit. I'm not even going to try to aerobrake with this guy. We're just going to do a nice standard orbital insertion maneuver. It's going to be less efficient, but we should have more than enough fuel to do that and still refuel our other spacecraft. So I'm just going to bring us down to about, I think 240 is good. Let's see, what are we looking like on fuel? Yeah, we have over 1,000. I don't even know if we have room for that much fuel in our other spacecraft. So I think that's perfectly fine for us to waste some on doing a regular orbital insertion without aerobraking. Of course, aerobraking would save us fuel, but if we don't have room for that fuel anyway, it's kind of a waste. So, and it's very dangerous, especially on Duna's tenuous atmosphere. So let's just burn retrograde now. And while that's setting that up, no, not the Duna lander, doing the transfer stage, we're going to set as our target. But first, we'll get ourselves in a nice, relatively circular orbit here above Duna, high above Duna. Allow him to get to a position where he's catching up to us, and then we are going to plan our encounter, which we will try to plan to occur on the sunny side of the planet, because that will make it much, much, much easier for us to perform our docking. I have not included lights on this spacecraft, so you know, it's that's something we always have to keep in mind. And at this point, we also can go ahead and try to burn ourselves a little north and fix our inclination relative to our target. There we go. Now let's just turn retrograde again. We're pretty close as far as inclination. There's an Ike encounter that we don't want right now. We do want to go to Ike, but not until we've docked with our other spacecraft. There's nobody to land there now. Even though we have the lander, we do need to include a crew on that lander. So just keep burning, get our apoapsis down. Get it down below 300 and we'll be close enough. In the meantime, let's do a quick check on our fuel. Looking good. I'd really like to have at least 900 units of liquid fuel when we dock, so that we can fill up that other spacecraft. I think that's still more than we will need, but I'm really not sure exactly how much fuel we will be able to include on that spacecraft. So we'll get ourselves down. Look at that, there's the sun coming up over Duna. And I guess that's good enough to get ourselves set up. So at this point, we're going to have to do some time warping to get ourselves set up for a rendezvous. So I'm going to cut you guys out and I'll bring you in once I've set ourselves up to rendezvous and dock. So I've set ourselves up a maneuver to rendezvous here. And it's going to be about another 14 seconds of burning. There we are, burning our engines next to Duna. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We're going to cut our engines, and let's see, 11 kilometers. If I burn a little more, wow, it goes up. Okay, so that will be the rendezvous that we're going to use. So now we're just going to warp around. Unfortunately, we're going to end up like right as we're going onto the night side of the planet, which is really upsetting, but what are you going to do? At least as I recall, the other spacecraft has lights lighting up the docking port, and I hope I still have them on. So let's go ahead now. There's our target, 10 kilometers away. Sometimes the closest approach vector actually does not give you the most accurate closest approach. So that's something to always keep in mind here. But we're going to kill our relative velocity and get ourselves headed towards the target, because right now we're heading away from him. And that is less beneficial for docking and rendezvous for that matter. So here we go. Kill another 40 meters a second. $10 meters a second, and Good, we're pretty much zeroed out. Let's get our velocity now headed towards him as best as possible. Those of you who are new to the rendezvous, I'm just basically trying to get our prograde vector as closely as possible lined up with this pink vector, which is the direction to the target, which will mean that we are moving towards the target. Now I'm turning myself around so that when we get close enough I can slow ourselves back down. I probably should have actually added a little more velocity headed towards the target, but as you see we're getting pretty close. 3.5 kilometers, so now we're just going to do that same basic procedure again. Kill this velocity by pointing at the retrograde. My nav ball, of course, is in target mode, which allows me to know what my speed is relative to my target. And a little more. And get ourselves within a few hundred meters, hopefully, of the transfer stage, and then be able to fly the rest of the docking on RCS. Of course, I'm a physics major, so I definitely understand the orbital mechanics going on here, but I'm not a fantastic pilot, I'm not going to lie. There are those who are really good at this game and can perform a docking without using the RCS systems. I am not one of those people. So I have a general understanding of how to, manage my orbits and in order to get where I want to go, to rendezvous spacecraft with each other, how making one maneuver will affect my orbit. But as far as actually controlling the spacecraft, I'm relatively mediocre. We don't actually study that at university. They don't have a Kerbal Space Program major, which is kind of a shame, because I would totally do that. I mean, I don't know what use it would be, but it would be fun. So let's see, we're really close now, actually closer than I was expecting to get on before switching to RCS. So we will do the standard, kill as much of our relative velocity as possible, get ourselves pointed at him, switch ourselves to chase cam, and do our more or less standard docking maneuver that those of us who play KSP have done many, many, many times. So there we go. Look at that. We're really close. Man, I wish it was lighter. Wow, look at that. We are not pointed the same way relative to him that I thought we were. But that's okay. Shit happens, they say. So the big problem is we don't want to go too far forward. We need to keep going right, and we need to even be going down. See what's it? Yeah, see, that's his orientation down that way. So let's go like that. And at this point, We'll fly a little bit more this way. Get ourselves in. Look at that, Ike behind us. I love this game. Like, I just can't say that enough. It really is gorgeous, and the physics are usually pretty good. I mean, the Kraken does attack sometimes, but what are you going to do? If you don't know what the Kraken is, be happy about that, because the Kraken is a great way to ruin your day. Oh, so I overshot him a little bit, but I think we're going to get the job done like this. The magnetism of the ports should solve the fact that we're not 100% lined up, you know, in the same direction, but we're pretty close. So just get ourselves like that. Make sure our docking points are pointed one at the other. And coming in, we have contact and we have mating. Look at that. So at this point, of course I turned off the UI, which is not going to help. We'll transfer all of this fuel, and we should have more than enough. To fill ourselves up, and then we can drop that stage, and if it has some fuel left, we can even deorbit it into Duna, which it looks like it will have fuel left. No, it won't. So we're going to put about 75 into here. We'll just fill it up actually, and then the other one we'll put as much as we can fit and transfer from the middle one to make sure we're balanced. So, but we have more than enough fuel here, and the light lander now attached. This is fantastic for us. So the only other thing we're going to need to do is make sure that the RCS tanks on the lander are full, because that's the only RCS we have for this mission. And this stage we're just going to ditch in deep space, so it doesn't really need the RCS, maybe a little bit in order if we want to land him, but for the moment most of the RCS here is unnecessary, but on the lander it will be if we want to redock with the mothership after landing on Ike. There we go. We can go ahead and ditch this lower stage, and look at that, we have a pretty much fully fueled spacecraft here. So I think that's a good stopping point for today. Thanks for watching. I'm Neil, and have a good day.